Hi, my name is Rachel Paxton. Today I'm here to show you how to make homemade chili. What will you get out of this class? In this class you will learn how to make a canned homemade chili. I'll lead you through the process step by step. I'll give you the recipe, the canning supply list, and an altitude reference chart that you can download and print out for future reference. You will also gain the confidence you need to try more pressure canning recipes on your own. My name is Rachel Paxton, and I'm a freelance writer and mom of 5 children, ages 28 to 6. This is me and my husband Dave. We've been married for 20 years. And these are 3 of our children. Zachary and Christian are twins. They're almost 11, and Trenton is 6. We also have a 28 and a 26-year-old daughter. I've been canning for more than 20 years, and I'm also the owner of the website creativehomemaking.com. For this recipe, you will need 3 cups of dried pinto or kidney beans, 5 teaspoons of salt, 3 pounds of hamburger, a cup and a half of chopped onion, a cup of chopped bell peppers, a teaspoon of black pepper, 3 to 6 tablespoons of chili powder, depending on how spicy you want it to be, and 8 cups of crushed or chopped tomatoes. You also need a pressure canner, a ladle, a jar lifter, a wide mouth funnel, and pint or quart size canning jars. This is what a pressure canner looks like. There's 2 kinds of pressure canners, a dial gauge and a weighted gauge canner. This is the dial gauge. This is what I use. It's what you'll most likely find if you don't already have one. You can buy these on Amazon for about $75 for the 16-quart variety. You can spend a little bit more for a 23-quart one if you want to be able to can more jars at one time. But this is good for starters. If you're just getting started canning, I recommend you buy a pressure canner instead of a boiling water canner. A boiling water canner is less expensive, but a pressure canner you can use for pressure canning and boiling water canning, and a boiling water canner you can only use for boiling water canning. So if you're going to be doing both, I recommend that you get a pressure canner. There's a link to this in your supply list in your course materials if you need to look this up on Amazon. You'll also need a jar lifter and a wide mouth funnel. These are really nice when you're ladling your food in your jars. They sit in the top of the jar. It keeps things from spilling. This recipe is a little bit more involved than some of the other recipes. A couple of the recipes, like the pork and beans and the bean and ham soup, you put dry beans in the jar before you pressure can, but with this recipe you need to soak them ahead of time, so it takes a little bit longer. So before you go to bed some night, place your beans in a large stock pot and cover them with 1 inch or 2 of water and just let it sit overnight. And another way you can do it more quickly is to put the same amount of water in and bring the beans to a boil, and then turn off the heat and let the lid sit on it for an hour. And I actually prepared this recipe twice, once with letting the beans sit overnight and once doing the quick start method, and it worked great both ways, so it's up to you which way you want to do it. After you've either cooked the beans and let them sit or let them sit overnight, you want to pour the water out and put new water in the pan again at the same amount as last time. You want to add 2 teaspoons of salt to the water and let the beans simmer for 30 minutes and then pour out the water again. While you're letting your beans simmer for 30 minutes, you want to get your jars and rings and lids sterilized. If you're reusing jars, that's fine. You can't reuse lids, but if you want to reuse your jars and your rings, you can, and make sure you use new lids every time. You want to fill your canner with about 3 inches of water and start it heating to boil. Next, you want to chop your onions and your bell peppers. This is my vegetable chopper I use. I love this. It makes chopping vegetables so easy, and you don't have to get them all over your hands. And it even has a measuring cup in the bottom, so you don't have to measure them separately. These are about $25, and I use mine all the time for canning and just preparing any recipe. So if you're looking for something to ask for Christmas or your birthday or something, this is a perfect thing to ask for. You will love it. There's a link to this on the supply list in your course materials. The link is to Amazon. And also chopped up 8 cups of tomatoes. Next, you want to brown your hamburger and your onions and your bell peppers in a frying pan. And now you want to get out a big stock pot and you want to put together the peppers, onions, and hamburgers, your beans, and put them all together. And you can also see I've added the tomato juice and the tomato sauce. The tomato juice can be from the store. I happen to have some homemade, so I used my homemade. And that's a 15-ounce can of tomato sauce, and that's 4 cups of tomato juice. You also want to add the 3 more teaspoons of salt, pepper, and chili seasoning. I have a homemade chili seasoning that I use. There's the recipe for that chili seasoning in your course materials. If you don't have homemade, that's fine. You can use them from the store. This recipe made 5 quarts, I believe, of chili, 4 or 5 quarts. So that's how many jars you need to sterilize. And after you heat the chili up for about 20 minutes or so, you want to ladle it into your sterilized canning jars, leaving 1-inch headspace. The headspace is very important when you're pressure canning. The food in the jars expands when it's being heated, and if you don't leave enough space in the jars for it to expand, your jars can explode. So just pay attention to your recipe and you won't have any problems. You then want to wipe the rims of the jar with a damp paper towel or a dish towel to make sure that you get a good seal with your lids. Put your lids and rings on the jars just finger tight. They don't need to be super tight, and put them in your canner. You want to process the jars at 10 pounds of pressure for 70 minutes for pints and 90 minutes for quarts. When you put the lid on, there's an arrow on the top of the lid that helps you line it up so you can lock it in place. And you want to turn the heat up on high on your stove. Remove the pressure regulator from the vent pipe, and you'll soon see steam coming out of your vent pipe. As soon as you see the steam coming out, you want to wait about 10 minutes and then put the pressure regulator back on the vent pipe. And then a few minutes later, as the pressure starts building in the pan, the lid lock will pop up. Then you'll know the pressure is building. You'll start seeing the dial on the gauge move. It'll start moving up. When it gets to 10, you want to turn your temperature on your stove way down to medium, medium, low. If you don't turn it down, the pressure will keep building and it'll get too hot. And so you want to turn it down to low and watch the gauge as it drops. And you don't want it to drop below 10. You want it to stay right at 10 or 11, so adjust your temperature so it stays at the same temperature. If it drops below 10, you have to start timing over again, so you don't want it to drop below 10. But when you get a constant temperature and it's at 10 pounds of pressure, you can set your timer. After the timer is done, you just turn your stove off and let it sit. After 10 or 15 minutes or so, the lid lock will go back down again, and then you'll know that the pressure's been released. Let it sit for another 10 minutes or so, and then you can remove the lid safely and take your jars out. Just one word about ceramic stoves. If you have a ceramic stovetop, you need to check with your manufacturer to make sure that it's safe to can on your stovetop. Some ceramic stovetops can become cracked if they get overheated or if your pan is not the right size, and it's also very hard to regulate the pressure in your pressure canner when the ceramic stovetop's temperature goes up and down to regulate itself, and it will cause your pressure to go up and down. So that's very hard to regulate. So it's possible to do, but it's very difficult. You have to adjust your temperature to keep it at the right pressure. So just check with your manufacturer and make sure that that's safe. I've had a lot better luck though using just a regular stove. After you take the jars out, put them on the counter on a towel and let them cool. Usually your jars will seal in the canner, but if they're not, they should seal within 10 or 15 minutes or so. When you take them out, you should hear a pinging noise. You can tell if the jars are sealed by putting your finger in the middle of the jar and pushing down. If the lid goes down and back up again, then that means they're not sealed, and you can still eat them. You just put it in the refrigerator, and you need to eat it within a week. If it is sealed, you can put it in a dark, cool place for 1 to 2 years. I was a little skeptical when I first made this because my family's a little picky, and they're used to their chili from the grocery store, so I didn't know if they were going to like this or not. And I was very pleasantly surprised. They really liked it, and everyone said that they would eat it instead of chili from the store, so that made me very happy. So give this recipe a try. It has a lot of flavor, and you can add more cayenne pepper to it if you like, if you want it spicier. And it's just really good, so it'll be something we'll be definitely making again. I hope you enjoy it, and I hope to see you again.